Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Poet Speaks podcast. Now, our next guest is a motivational poet and mental health advocate. She strives to inspire others to thrive in the art of self-love and persevere towards their dreams with joy. Recently, her debut poetry collection, Phasing Freely, was published by Alegria Publishing. In her book, she explores her personal mental health journey through the many phases of the moon, inviting readers to excavate and examine the craters of their own. Her poetry has a global footprint. She's traveled and performed throughout the United States, Italy, France, England, Ireland, Spain, Australia. Her work transcends borders, touching hearts and inspiring minds wherever she goes. Everyone, welcome to the Poet Speaks podcast. Tyler Lenn Bradley. Tyler Lenn, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here. So honored.
Absolutely. No, we're honored to have you. Now, tell me a little bit before we begin. I know LA is where you're at, born and bred, born and raised. Is that your stomping grounds for life? What's the story with that?
Nope, it's not. I am a Midwesterner. I am from Michigan, born and raised in Lansing. Some may know Michigan State. I live near that for a reference. But born and raised in Michigan, and then came out here after grad school for a job, but ended up loving it. So I'm still here 4.5 years later.
Okay, yeah. For sure. So LA has a stereotype of being, it is definitely like the entertainment capital of the world. But you have a lot of people, they come and go, they get burnt. What's been your experience? So you've loved LA, you've loved the art scene, everything is good there for you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, people come and go. I can understand that. It's definitely a lot. And I've lived in a few big cities. Like I lived in Chicago for 2 years, which is not quite as big, but big in itself. But for me, it's about balance, right? So if I was here and I was just doing everything that I thought I should, and or just kept going every day or every weekend, I definitely get burnt out. But I've learned to let the FOMO go and just
Yes.
take moments for myself. But I love it out here. The diversity, the acceptance, and just the overall culture is great for me, in my opinion.
Absolutely. That FOMO will have you
It'll get you.
stuck. That junk will have you stuck. I feel you on that one.
Yeah.
Living in New York, I could definitely relate to that. But you gotta let it go.
You
But
gotta let go.
I love how you mentioned that balance part, and we're gonna kind of get into that later, how mental health, how you're really excavating that in your poetry. But
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about, how did you find poetry? Was it in your childhood growing up in the Midwest as a Midwestern girl, or was it kind of more towards adulthood? Where did poetry find you, or did you find it?
Yeah, it was more towards adulthood. When I was in undergrad, I went to school in Michigan, and I studied theater and dance and business. So I was a theater major. I loved to perform, and so my senior year, I produced own, I called it theatrical dance production. It combined dance and music and theatrics to basically address a variety of social issues. And this was a decade ago. And so I was creating this original piece with this story, and I needed something to close the show, to really bring it all together, because the show had a variety of different stories in it, but I needed like a through line, you know? And that speech ended up being a spoken word piece. I didn't really think of it at the time as that, but as I would perform the speech, and it became that. And so that was 11 years ago. Really out of the blue, I just and I found that I had a knack for it. And I did that, and then probably 3, 4 years later, I wrote my second spoken word piece. And that came when I was in grad school. I got to study abroad in Rome and take a creative writing class. And I wrote my second spoken word piece there, called Rocking Chair, which is about a young woman who grew up watching her mom be abused and how she would use her chair as a way to get through it. And it just kind of happened. And after that moment, I didn't give it up, but I didn't write any more poetry for another three-ish years. And then what happened was, there's an organization in LA called the Community Literature Initiative. And they basically help people write poetry and write a book while you learn to write poetry. I signed up, and next thing I knew, I had all these poems. I'm like, oh, wait, this is something I love. So it's really been a labor of love for like a decade that slowly has built over time.
My goodness, yeah. That I hear such great things though about LA, like the Community Literature Initiative. That
Yeah.
sounds beyond phenomenal. While you're learning poetry and taking those classes, they're also engaging you to write your first chapbook or book. And tell us
Yes.
a bit how that is it a selective process to get into that space? Like how does that work? That sounds like such a phenomenal opportunity to do those things at once.
It's amazing. You audition, but I don't know. I mean, I got in. I don't know how stringent it is, like how hard it is, but I do know they usually want someone to have wrote like one poem before and have some
Yeah.
idea of poetry. But you audition, there's an interview, but you go in, it's like a 9 month class, and you learn every week. You have a virtual classroom, you have your classmates, and you all learn together, you give each other feedback. And then as you do it, you're writing this book, and it's so great. At the end of it, they literally print out a real book for you. They have a designer that designs it
Wow.
for you. You get a cover and you print it out, and then they have a conference where you can pitch to publishers. And so that's actually how I got published. I pitched to multiple there. I got two publishers interested in my book and ultimately signed with Alegria Publishing. So it's a really amazing opportunity. You can do it from anywhere because it's on Zoom. So
Mm.
definitely hit up communitylit.org, I think. And they're also on Instagram. But if you want to write a poetry book, do it. And they also have I think a children's book writing course as well that's similar, but great opportunity. Yeah.
Absolutely. That sounds beyond phenomenal. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's kind of where you kind of got your feet going a little bit. Now tell us a
Yeah.
little bit. I want to dive into your debut poetry collection,
Yeah.
Phasing Freely. Now I
Mhm.
found it so interesting looking up your work and reading some of it. You explore your personal mental health journey through the many phases of the moon, engaging readers to examine the craters of their own. Now, tell me a little bit about the DNA of how that came about for your debut. That is such a creative, such a really celestial, otherworldly. A lot of people don't look at, maybe that astrology, those phases of the moon,
Yeah.
connecting it to mental health journey. Tell us how that even came about and describe that comparison of mental health to phases of the moon.
Thank you for asking. This is my book, Phrasing Freely. I'm very proud of it. And the origin came from a variety of different places. And are you good if I speak like very bluntly about mental health issues? Trigger
Come
warning.
on.
Okay,
Yeah,
just
bring it.
be
Yeah, and
real.
I appreciate the
Uh,
trigger warning. Absolutely. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah. So in terms of the moon, I'm a proud nerd. And growing up, I loved Sailor Moon. Are you familiar with that anime?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, yes. Very nostalgic anime. So watching that show, I fell in love with this idea of the moon. And then about 4 years in 2019, along to back up, I had depression growing up. Probably 16 years old was when I first started really seeing signs of it, but I didn't know what it was. No one talked about it. I just thought I had. I didn't even know what I had. I just knew I was not happy, but didn't do anything about it. Didn't have the thoughts or the even the
Mm.
well, not to say I didn't have the resources, but the teachings to do something about it. So it just kind of sat there for years, and I just kind of worked my way through it. And then in 2019, my depression really took a turn, and I became suicidal. And one night I went to a bridge in LA, and I was going to jump. That was my intention. Um, and sorry, I'm not gonna cry. It's fine. But when I was there, contemplating this, I saw the moon and the
Mm.
full moon. Um, and it kind of woke me up out of this kind of depressive state and like, no, this is not who you are. Go home. There's light and love in your life. And after that moment, I really took a turn. I was already in therapy, but I really started to really hone in on my therapy and really say, I need to do something I need to change my life. I'm more than this. This is not me. Um, and so after a couple years of therapy, I started to take the CLI class, and that's what I started to write about, was just my mental health journey, the beginnings of it, how it formed to the transformation that I had made. So phasing freely, the book is, each chapter is a different phase of the moon. It starts with new moon, the middle is full moon, and it goes back to new moon. And it's
Mm,
just about new moon. The first chapter is about generational trauma. It's about, I believe that, particularly for Black people, our trauma starts with slavery, and that has trickled down for years and manifests itself in different ways. It's a domino effect expressed in different ways. And for me, I feel like it comes from my depression, stems from that. It's not all of that, but it definitely stems. So it starts with New Moon is about, let me open it. New Moon is about generational trauma. And then we go into Waning Gibbous, and that is oh, wait, I'm sorry, I am on the wrong chapter. So New Moon is about my genesis and
mm,
how I came to be. Waxing Crescent is about generational trauma. First quarter is about familial love, because though there was generational trauma, there was also love, and it's good to give flowers where flowers are due.
mm,
But then we get to the waxing gibbous, in that even though there is love, there's still society in the world. And I grew up in a mostly white environment. And it wasn't until I was older that I really realized that impact that that had on me and how I felt about myself as a Black woman. And then from there, we go into Full Moon, which really talks about that moment where I was suicidal and I was staring at the moon. In that poem, the moon is speaking to me, saying, I
mm,
know your secret. This is not you. This is not your end. Go home.
mm,
So that's that poem. Waning Gibbous is about healing and about unpacking those layers of shame and generational trauma and of self-doubt and everything that was in there. Last quarter is about found love. It's about how after I started to work on myself, I found true love in my partner in my life. And then Waning Crescent is about the promise to myself. These are the mantras I have for myself now as I continue my journey. And the new moon is about transformation. Because for me, and I'm making this a very long statement, but for me, what's great about the moon, and that's in my last piece, is that the moon phases in its own time, but there's all these stories about the moon. You hear the moon, stories of werewolves, or stories of lust and love, or princesses on the moon. There's all these stories that people have made up, but the moon is constant. It phases in its own time. And for me, that's what I want to be like. That's why I want other people to hear, is that there will always be someone telling you who you are, what you can do, what you can't do, but it's up to you to phase in your own time, in your own way. So that's what Phasing Freely is about. Very long-winded, but that's what inspired it. So my hope, the book has a variety of poems, quotes, and also places for people to journal. Let me see if I can find one, and reflect on their experience. So for example, people can journal and reflect on what's going on in their lives and how they can unpack. Because ultimately, in everything I do, any type of art, I always want to help people see the radiance in themselves, and then ultimately from that, help them see the radiance in others too.
absolutely. No, first and foremost, thank you so much for bravely sharing that experience in your life. I know it definitely helps a lot of people, and you don't even realize it for those that are listening to hear you so explain it so eloquently, but also kind of tell us about your journey, the ups and downs of that. So thank you so much. You know what? I would say, why I love the moon is because it's always there. And I really, that's kind of what I took away partly from your explanation, many phases of the moon. The moon is always there for me, you know what I mean? Similar to the sun, the moon will always be there for me. So I can kind of correlate that, our mental health, our spirits, correlating it back to the moon. It's something that's always there for us. No, so I love that. I love that comparison. And I love that you had in your poetry book somewhere for people to also write their poetry and journal. That's
Yep.
such a unique concept. And that's something I think that's so accessible to so many people. People, I think when people sometimes read poetry, it's this idea of I'm intimidated by it
Hmm.
because it's this rough, not rough, but it's this, metaphors and similes clashing,
Yeah, yeah.
deeper meaning. But then it's like for you to give that space to someone to just be like, just freely write, again, you're collection called Phasing Freely to give that person that reads it that freedom to freely kind of express themselves as they listen and, transcribe and read what you're saying. No, I think that's wonderful. So big ups to you. Tell us a little bit about what's the reception been like? Because I also see this as being something not only adults of any age, but I would think young adults have experiences with depression as well. Like you said, you recognize yours at the age of 16. What's been the reception for your debut collection?
It's been good. It came out in December, and I've sold a decent amount, and people seem to really love it. I think the major thing. So I'm a performer first. I'm a
Yeah.
performer by in heart, and so for um my debut event, I took the book and I turned it into a one woman live show.
Wow.
Um, that included poetry, projection, visuals, music, live music. I had a drummer, and in that show, I basically told my story, very quickly, much quicker than the book.
Mm.
But the reception from that was was amazing. People, because what I did was afterwards had a talk back. I always like to discuss after I do a performance because I think it's good for people to hear other people's thoughts, but just to hear people say afterwards how it impacted them, how grateful they were to tell that I told their story. People would come up to me and say, "Hey, I struggle with this too. I have this too. I
Yeah.
have this."
Yeah.
mental illness." It's just it allows people just to be themselves, and that's all I want. It's like people to accept themselves and be who they are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Pushing people in that direction to truly be who they are. I love that. So now let's kind of go into poetry and mental health. Those are two big topics. I mean, what how do you bond the two? How do you see it as both kind of taking up the same space? Because I think people know writing can be something that's freeing for some people, but I don't think they necessarily make the full-blown connection, poetry and mental health. How do you kind of bond the two in the artistry and writing that you do?
Yeah, for me, poetry is about sharing my voice and about sharing I mean, everyone poetry is different for everyone, right?
Mhm.
But for me, it's about sharing my voice or sharing other people's voices, other people's stories. Um, and so in that, it's a perfect platform for me to share my experiences, which often are very hard to talk about in a way that people can understand because it's art and they can grasp it. It's not as
Yeah.
intimidating. It's not as hard to talk about if I say it in a poem and then afterwards I talk about it. It's accessible. And my poetry, I don't really see myself as like I can't even say the word, like as a poet. Like I'm not the best written poet in the world, but my poetry I feel like is very accessible where I use metaphors, but it's not anywhere near as to some others. So and that's my art, but also I do that on purpose because I want people to really be able to connect to it. Um, and so for me, it's just a way to share my story, but also a way for people to read it and understand that they're not alone. And mostly through, yes, through the written word, but really through the performance.
Um,
And I can share my story on stage in a way that's impactful. It makes people feel something. It makes people feel good about who they are. I hope that answers your question.
no, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about that performance side for you.
Mhm.
That seems to be such a, like you said, you're a performer first. What does
Yeah.
that mean? When you say I'm a performer first, what does that mean to you then as a spoken word poet? What does that then mean if you're a performer first?
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw I think it was Nicki Minaj got interviewed, this is who knows when. And someone asked her about something about being a rapper and how did you become a rapper? Something like that. And it was interesting her response. She's like, I'm not a rapper.
Mhm.
She was like, I'm a performer, but rap is my medium of performing at this moment. And I was like, that is so interesting. That's so interesting. And I felt that because I do see myself as a poet, but I'm a performer first, and I feel like I am more of myself. I step into a different type of world and being when I'm on stage, and poetry is my medium of doing that. I feel like I am the strongest in terms of my ability to emote and get people to feel when I'm on stage. So as a spoken word artist, spoken word is the best way I found naturally to do it. I used to want to be a singer, and I the amount of time and money I spent on voice lessons, and just not being good at it, and being really hard on myself because I can't sing, or I had like a break. For people who are singers know that couple notes I couldn't do it. And then I realized I can like I took a step back and I was like, what do I like about this idea of singing?
Mm,
Of being a singer? Because there's all these big, I want to be a blank. Great. What does that mean? Right?
mm,
I like to be on stage. I like to inspire people. I like to help people. I like to use my words to help people feel. I like to do it with music. There are other ways to do, there are a variety of ways, and one of those is spoken word. And so once I accepted who I was and what I'm good at and what I'm not, and stopped putting so much energy into what I think I should be rather into who I just am, I realized I'm a great spoken word artist and I can do exactly what I love in this medium, and still perform and still be that performer that I know that I need to be, because it's such a part of who I am. So that's kind of how that merges for me.
I think that is such a great revelation to come to in your life though. I feel like that's such a really big like full circle moment to realize, okay, I don't have to be in this box. There's actually other ways for me to get to that same destination. And I think to really fully realize that about yourself, it clicks something in me right as you were explaining that, because that's so true. It's like, hey, I know this about me. Okay, let's actually just start taking these blocks one by one. All right, you can do that same thing through doing something that you actually enjoy doing instead of trying to fit into this mold. No, I feel like that's such clarity to reach in your life. What stage were you at when you just realized that? I mean, when did it kind of happen upon you that, hey, I can do this instead? Because it sounds so simple, but it's not. Human beings, we're just not simple enough. Like it
We're
really
not.
does. It takes some time to actually reach that. What stage did you kind of reach that?
Yeah, I have to give shout out to therapy. Therapy
Sure.
definitely helped. What stage? Honestly, it's been recently. It's
Nice.
been maybe in the last year, a couple years. Where So when I first moved to LA, I was still trying, I had a full-time job, but I was still taking voice lessons and that, but I just wasn't happy. I wasn't good at it. And I really think being in CLI and just starting to perform more, I realized,
Mm,
actually, to be honest with you, it was recently where I realized that. It might have been 6 months ago, and I was like, I am doing exactly what I wanted to do.
yeah.
I, I'm just not, I don't have to worry about being on pitch. Like, thank God. It was recently where I realized that that's enough, and I've been mulling over this idea of the what is the idea dream, or what is the, like, take your dream, and what is the actual essence of that? What is the actual essence of your goal? Because we
Mm,
live in a world where social media, you see people do this and that, and everyone's doing all these big things, and like, you want to be this big thing. For all my life, I wanted to be it. I felt like I needed to be like an it. I call it the it syndrome, where I just need to be it. And at one moment, it was a basketball player. The next moment, it was tennis player, and then it was a singer. And then I was like, but why? Like, is and I think there's just kind of something in our society is like, you need to be something. And that just for me wasn't good for my mental health. And I don't think it's good for a lot of people. So what I've been trying to figure out now is, what is the essence of what I really love to do, and
mm,
how can I do that? So, and I talk to a lot of students, and they want to be, I want to be a film director for movies, and that's great. I'm like, great. So what about that do you like? Because sometimes what happens is you get into that and you no longer like it because you didn't think about what that means. That means long hours. That means dealing with a whole bunch of people that aren't that nice all the time. So take a step back, think about, what do I actually love, and how can I do that in a way that works for me? And I don't think we're taught to do that. We're just taught to I want to be a lawyer, so go be a lawyer. What does that even mean? Like there are all these different type of lawyers. I want to be a doctor because it makes a lot of money. Great. It's funny. I love my mom, but she always said, she's like, I always wanted to be a doctor, but she hates being around blood and stuff. Anytime I get a scratch, she's like, I can't look at it. I'm like, you don't want to be a doctor. Like,
Yes, yeah.
can't even look at the blood of your daughter. So
Yeah.
like really think about what it is that you love and then how you can do that in your own way. And it's not always, the way that we think it should be.
And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, like, I recently kind of had
Yeah.
that same line of thought. I was doing this job. I was in the career field where I always wanted to do it. And then it dawned on me, like, I don't this, if something is making you lose your integrity, something is making you lose your honestly, your sanity and mental health, is it really worth it?
Yep.
Just, because you have the accolades, but then it's like you're done. Every other party you can barely stand up and even look at yourself in the mirror, right? And it was one of those things I realized I really did, and kind of correlating to what you're saying, it clicked to me that, like you said, you had mentioned, you want to be it. I didn't process in my mind, Amanda, you're already it. Not to toot my
Hmm.
own horn, but I mean that just really in the sense of you're already enough.
Yep.
You don't
Exactly.
need to you don't need to do a billion and one things to prove what you're already doing it. You know what I
Yep.
mean? It's just you just have to refine, strategize, and just improve on what you're doing. And I think you're right, so many of us, we don't learn that. We have these kind of, I think we fall in love more so with the titles. I don't
Yes.
think most people fall in love with the actuality. They fall in love with the fantasy, not the reality of what their life will look like doing certain things, being with certain people. You could put it in any arena you want. And it's one of those things, I really do believe you are correct. Like, we don't learn enough about ourselves to even know how us individually, how we're even going to do that job. What we're going to be like being that doctor, lawyer,
Exactly.
artist, whatever you want to call it. Now, for you, I mean, it's, that whole kind of correlation of, again, I see the bonds of the mental health work and how these things really correlate. For you, I'm just so curious now. What does being an artist really mean to you then?
That's such an interesting question. I'm in this residency for this organization called the Painted Brain. And we were talking about that recently. And there's three artists in my group, and we were like, we sometimes feel uncomfortable saying I'm an artist because there seems to be you need to be at a certain level to be an artist.
Yeah.
Uh, but then we unpacked it and it was like, artist really is just um, expressing yourself in the medium of your choice, whatever that means to you. And that could be, there are artists who play video games or who, I don't know a whole lot about gaming, but there are artists who create worlds in video game. That's art, there, if that's drawing, if that's writing or any medium, if you are expressing yourself in a way, and with a medium of your choice, I think that's art. And that could be a variety of different things, ways I can't even think of, you know. I think it's as simple as that. It's not a word that you have to
Mm,
be enough or work enough to become an artist. If you just do it, that's art. And so it's taken me a long time to realize that, and also to realize that we have these buckets, and all these buckets have guardrails. Like if you want to be a dancer, you have to take ballet. And then you have to take modern, and then you have to be able to put your foot above your head and then stand on your toe, and then you're a dancer. And I could never do any of those things. So for years, I loved to dance. I loved to choreograph, but I felt so like I can't say I'm a dancer because I
yeah.
can't do. But then I realized perhaps I can just do it my own way because where does all that even come from? People have been dancing for centuries without ballet, without ballet, and doing wonderful things. That is society telling us this is what it is. It should be, but that my therapist doesn't like the word should, and neither do I. You can do your own thing, make your own way, make your own path, make
Mm,
your own art without trying to fit into these buckets, because these buckets are just made by humans who someday decided that this is what it is. Okay. Like, and there is beauty in the ballet, there's beauty in the modern, there's beauty in that, but there's also beauty outside of that too. That was a long-winded answer to your question, but yeah.
No worries. We love the long-winded, but you're really hitting some major points and dropping some amazing gems. So we thank you, Tyler. Now I want to kind of move on. I'm curious now. You tell me, you are the host of the Los Angeles Poet Society's Voices of Color, an Instagram live that amplifies the voices and stories of BIPOC poets. Tell us, how'd you get that role? How'd you get that position? That sounds phenomenal. Tell us a little bit about that, the role that you play there with Los Angeles Poet Society's Voices of Color.
Yeah. So the LA Post Society is an amazing organization. It's run by a good friend of mine, Jessica, and she has been working on this, I think, over a decade. Um, she's just phenomenal. I don't know how she does so many events all the time, but long story short, I became involved with them. They actually published one of my first, the first people to ever publish me in an anthology, and I've just been, going to the events and doing the open mics and getting to know the community. And they were looking for people to host Instagram Live, and I applied. And long story short, I got it, which is really exciting. I actually was a guest on the show 2 to 3 years ago. So I'm just starting, but I've done 2 interviews so far. But basically, the goal is to amplify Black and Brown voices, specifically writers, and that's writers of poetry or writers of fiction, etc. But it's just a fun platform to really dive deep into those stories and those conversations in a safe space. So I'm really enjoying it, and definitely check out LA Poet Society. Anyone watching this, they do really great stuff.
Absolutely. Everyone check that out. That sounds like a amazing live to go ahead, watch, and join if you're a poet as well. Now tell me a bit, your poetry, you are a global poet, your global footprint. I mean, like I said in your intro, USA, Italy, France, England. Tell us a little bit about, I mean, when you travel abroad, and most importantly, when you travel abroad doing what you love, that's a whole nother game to play. I mean, that it hits different when you get to travel. It's such a privilege to travel as an artist and do what you love. I can't even put it to words. For you, what has that meant to you, being able to go to all over the globe and share your passion of poetry?
Yeah, I mean, in general, the travel. So what actually happened is that kind of after this time where I was depressed and things like that, I realized that I was aligning my worth to work,
Mm,
where how I did at work and my corporate 9 to 5 was equivalent to who I was as a person.
mm,
And I knew the only way to break myself out of that was to do something big. So my now fiance and I, we both quit our jobs. And this is what we did. This is such a privilege in what we did and that we were able to do it. But we quit our jobs, sold everything, mostly everything, and we traveled for 5 months and we went to 12 countries in
wow.
5 months. And it was the most amazing thing. But while I was there, how this all started in terms of touring or performing is I was actually in Rome, which was our first city, and I had gotten rejected from one of the publishers I was really interested in, basically. And
Mm,
I was really down on myself because I really worked hard and I really thought it was going to work out.
yeah.
And I was looking around like, I'm in Rome. Who, I have all this
Right?
opportunity. Why be stuck in my head when I can go out? So I went on Instagram or Facebook and I was like, spoken word poetry, Rome. Found something instantly that night or 2 nights later, went to this open mic, performed, and I was so nervous because most of the people there, when they performed in Italian, and I was
Mm,
like, I don't know Italian, but I went up there and performed, and I realized I was like, my poetry reached them. And I said to
mm,
myself, you have this opportunity to be in all these places. You better go perform. And so from there, that's how that started. And it was the most amazing thing. I will tell you, the culture, the poetry culture and the performance culture there was so similar everywhere I went. There was just this culture
mm.
of community and acceptance and support in every single country, which reminded me of a lot of what I see in LA. And it was a beautiful thing to be able to share my voice and to see that it resonated with people all over the world. So that was a dream. And so I often encourage. There was actually a good friend of mine. She was going to Paris. 2 people were going to Paris, and I said, "Gotta go perform." They're like, "No, no, no." I'm like, You got to go perform in Paris, and they
Yeah.
both did it and loved it. So it was a dream come true. And I highly, if anyone travels out of the country, even just to one country, find an open mic, find something to go to and perform, because I think it will change your life. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're making me want to jump on a plane right now, but getting the
Good.
travel bug, getting the itch. No, I think that is so beautiful because that just tells you, I mean, everyone has a story. Everyone needs to get their words out some way, somehow. So I love that you just found that community no matter what country you went to. I think that's the power of spoken word poetry, honestly. Yeah, that's amazing. All right, Tyler. Well, you have dropped so many gems. We told so many stories. We really appreciate everything that you're doing and what you're continuing to do. But we do have one last question for you. We ask everyone on the Poet Speaks podcast. Tyler,
Okay.
why do you need to get your words out?
Yeah, I think when I was in college, I was a resident assistant, all right, and really loved it because I got to really help people and young people. And I had a student say to me once, she's like, "Tyler, you're so much of yourself that you make people feel like they can be themselves," and I that just sticks with me, and that's why I share my story through poetry, but share it in general. Because if I can just be who I am and be honest about my experiences and what I've gone through, hopefully someone else can feel comfortable being who they are and getting the help that they need. And that's why I do it. That's that's it. There goes my hair. But that's why I do it. Just to help people. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, and there y'all have it. Tyler Bradley, everyone. All right, Tyler. Now, before we end, and please do drop your social, drop your website. Tell us what's coming up for you in 2024, and where can we keep up and find all of the amazing work that you're doing.
Yeah, so my website is Tyler Lenn Bradley. So Len is spelled Lenn. I always joke and say my name is a complete white man name, Tyler Lenn Bradley. Like, there you go. And then my Instagram is also at Tyler Lenn Bradley. My TikTok is at Tyler Lenn Bradley as well. And same with my YouTube. You can purchase my book on my website, tylerlennbradley.com. In terms of what's coming up next, my goal is to take my show Phasing Freely, the live show, and perform it in a variety of different spaces to get the conversation going about mental health. And then from there, see what's next.
Absolutely. All right, Tyler. We appreciate you, and I enjoyed you. Thanks for being a guest on the Poet Speaks podcast.
Thanks, Amanda.
Absolutely. And everyone go check out all Tyler's amazing work. All of her information will be in the link below in the description box, no matter where you listen to this podcast at. Check out her links in the description box below. Everyone, this is the Poet Speaks podcast. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.